All right, Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. My name is Isaac Mawath. But first and foremost, I want to say call Halayim, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Gadala, Rakayim, where I learned this truth from, who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people will come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So this is not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harachakwadash for permitting me to do such and answer my prayers. Baba Kashah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harachakwadash allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. Just in case but to prevent confusion, through my leisure time, I was going into the Hebrew, and I wanted to be able to say great millstone in the Hebrew. So I came up with through the studying, because I haven't gone into the Hebrew in a while, and I used a little bit of AI, and it came out to Gadala Rakayim, great millstone. So, I'll either be saying Gadala Rakayim, or I might just say 7:13:19, but I'm still referencing to Great Millstone or GMS. But for this video topic, I wanted to go into this particular scripture. Usually I come up with these video topics, playing with AI. I'm about to go to sleep. So last night, one of the scriptures I was reading and going into was Genesis 4th chapter, particularly the 7th verse. So I want to bring it out. So this is Genesis chapter 4, verse 7. It says, "If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him." Right? So let's go into co-pilot, other precepts. It says this verse is the Most High speaking directly to Cain. Now we know Cain was, the so-called white man prior to the flood. They were the sons of the wicked, which in this time he's living out the curse of Cain, which is him losing and being stripped of his pigmentation. It says after his offering was rejected, right, because the Most High requires blood. Let me see if I can get that in maybe it's 9. right. I'm going to start at Genesis chapter 9, verse 1, which goes into the covenant of the rainbow, which is Yahweh's promise not to flood the earth. But this is Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. It says, "And the Most High blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply." So we're instructed to be fruitful and multiply. So what's up with this damn devil talking about the planet is overpopulated? I watched a video of one of the brothers, and they were going into how you could fit all the people on the planet just in California, which, California is a massive state. And then I also saw a video that if you put all people into a meatball, it will fit in Central Park. So the earth is not overpopulated, man. It's just overran with bullshit philosophies and ideologies and lies. It says, "And replenish the earth, and the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth." So naturally, these animals have a fear of man. "And upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth." And that man is dealing with, specifically the sons of God, right? But since we're under these curses, we're subjected to receive judgment from wild beasts. But in the kingdom, and also on this side, starting with the elect, we're going to be at league with the animals, and these heathen nations are not. It says, "And upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, upon all that, and upon all the fishes of the sea, into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you." So every living thing that is according to the dietary law that is lawful unto you shall be your food, man. Right? And then, the medicines of the earth, these herbs, these vegetables, these fruits, you know, normally when you see dogs, when you see animals, they eat vegetation when they're sick. You're supposed to eat these things when, you're sick, when you're diseased. After you pray and, if need be, repent, right? It says, even so, just as he gave you meat, he said, even as the green herb have I given you all things. So our dietary or our diet consists of an omnivorous diet where you eat both meat and greens, right? But predominantly meat, right? Because you eat the sacrifice, and also you have to consider that certain fruits and vegetables, they come in their seasons, right? So they're not always readily available, right? Verse 4 says, "But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof." So life is in the blood. That's why you have red cells, T cells, your immune system, you get your DNA. "Shall ye not eat?" So you're not supposed to eat blood. You're not supposed to drink blood, but you have nations that do that. Some even drink the blood of humans, children. Verse 5, "And surely your blood of your lives will I require, at the hand of every beast will I require it." So that blood of the beast is what he requires, for sacrifice for your sins. It says, "And at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of the Most High made he man. Right? So whoever sheds blood, by man shall his blood be shed. So that also applies to you Edomites as well. Right? So that's the reason, besides, predestination, manifest destiny, why Cain was rejected and his offering was rejected. It says, and his anger rose, and therefore, since his offering was rejected, he was jealous of Abel, causing his anger to rise. He got mad, which it goes into Cain is angry and his countenance has fallen. Verse 5, the Most High questions his anger. Verse 6, then the Most High gives this warning and instruction. Verse 7, which we're going to go into in this video, verse 7, right? So it says, if thou doest well, so you got to do well, you got to do righteously. And this video is directed toward you Israelites, right? You so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous. This is how you prevent being wicked, prevent yourself being wicked, right? It says, if thou doest well, if you do righteously according to the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua Ba'ashim Harachakwadash, right? It says, shall thou not be accepted? So if you do right, you'll be accepted. It says, based on the surrounding verses, Cain's offering was rejected because Abel brought the firstlings and the fat. Verse 4, Cain brought fruit of the ground without the same care or quality, which, Yahweh doesn't, he didn't want that sacrifice. It says, the Most High is telling Cain, if you do what is right, you will be accepted just like Abel. This is not favoritism. It's a call to correct his actions. So even at then, Yahweh rebuked Cain, right? Not being a respecter of persons, but to correct him of his actions, right? And this is what Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua set up for the elect. He set up leaders. He set up things like rebuke and humiliation, to correct certain individuals of their missteps. As it says in the scriptures, a righteous man falls 7 times but get back up. You're not going to be perfect in this walk. You're striving for perfection, and you're not going to achieve that perfection until you're in the new bodies. Section 2, it says, and if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, because then you become complacent and then you just don't give a shit. You let iniquity you laden yourself with iniquity. You overbear yourself with iniquity, with sin, to the point where you're too far gone, you have to be destroyed. You don't give a shit. It says this is a key warning. The surrounding context shows Cain is already angry, right? Which it talks about, let not your anger. See if I could just phone her here. So let's go to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, it says, "Be ye angry." So it's okay to be angry, right? A lot of things piss you off. A lot of things piss me off, man. You know, and angers me to the point where, sometimes I'll just be like, fuck it. Or, momentarily just be like, it is the same characteristic of Yahweh Shem Shah. In their anger, as you read in the scriptures, you know, there's plenty of times where they were just like, fuck it, man. Fuck these niggas. But instead of abandoning their word, right, you know, they still have Yahweh, they still have Yasha Allah in their favor, man. Same thing with me. That's why certain people think, they mistake me being double-minded for, just me being angry or mad at some or certain situation. But, I get it done, you know. But it says, be ye angry and sin not, and also dealing with, all this information that we received and we see the times, how they're moving. Yeah, we're angry, but we're not to go out there and exert anything, man. Meaning we're to wait upon Yahweh Shah, man, and get busy when we get those Yahweh Shah Ratazah be that number, those new bodies. It says, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Right? Because when you're angry, man, sometimes you get so mad, you wanna fuck shit up, man. Punch out walls, punch doors, rip doors off the hinges. You know, you supposed to woosah. You're supposed to calm your ass down before the sun go down, man. Because they got this one saying, if it's not worth worrying about 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 years from now, then it's not worth being mad over. But Cain couldn't handle the humiliation. It says, neither give place to the devil, right? The devil enter in and cause you to sin. It says jealousy, emotionally unstable. And, Esau, which is Cain coming back, is emotionally unstable, man. It says Yahweh is telling him, if you don't correct yourself, sin is waiting right outside, ready to pounce. And that's the the principalities that we wrestle against. It says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities, the hierarchy of demons, man. Those certain demons can hop on you and lead you further away from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, because then that will cause your soul to be malicious with all those different demons. And the only way to be relieved of those demons, if it's the will of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, or you might have to be separated through death. It says the word picture is of sin, like a crouching animal at the door ready to enter Cain's life if he opens the way through anger and envy. And that's what he did. And what ended up creeping in, the spirit of murder, right? It says, and in the very next verse, Cain murders Abel, proving the warning was literal, and Cain was a so-called black man then, but he had the spirit of Edomite. So post-flood on this side, he came back into this world as Esau, carrying the curse of Cain, to live out the judgment that he's going to receive in these days, which is going to be him being destroyed and then going into slavery, starting with his rich elite bankers. Those 13 families. You know, and then after the 1,000 years is fulfilled, exterminated. Uh, Section 3 it says, "And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him." It says this part is often misunderstood, but the surrounding page content clarifies the flow. The Most High is talking about sin, not Abel, right? The subject of the sentence is the sin that lieth at the door. So the meaning is sin will desire to control you, and sin is controlling all these uh, people of this world, man. Especially the 2/3 of our people, man. Sin and righteousness really don't apply to these heathen nations. It only applies to the nation of Israel. And with the nation of Israel, you definitely see sin controlling these people, man. It says, but you must rule over it. So you have to conquer, sin. You have to conquer those thoughts. You got to conquer those demons, those left-hand sided spirits. It says, in other words, sin wants mastery over Cain. And we've seen sin have mastery over people, man. It says Cain must resist it. You got to resist certain things, man. For a woman, she bad, she got a man, you got to resist that. Even if she is trying to hit on you. That's why I don't try to be in fields or situations where, things of that nature could occur, like being a personal trainer, or working at a gym, right? It says, because, hey, man, things happen, man, especially with hormones, testosterone, pumping and flowing. Things can lead to another, man. So in order to eliminate that, just refrain yourself. Eliminate yourself from that equation. It says, Cain is responsible for controlling his impulses. So we're all responsible for our impulses, our appetites. It says this matches the moral tension of the chapter. Cain fails to rule over sin, and sin rules him, leading to Abel's murder. And that's what happens to our people, man. They let sin take hold of them and rule over them. And what is sin, one might ask? This is Paul to the Romans, or this is Paul to the Israelites in Rome. This is chapter 6, verse 23. It says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of the Most High is eternal life through Yahweh Shah HaMashiach," are the one, right? So the wages of sin is death. So sin leads to your demise. This is 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. "Whosoever committed sin, which is transgression of the law, transgressive also the law," not the so-called white man's law, the law of the Bible, the law of Moses, what a lot of you people refer to as the 10 Commandments, but really there's over 613. It says, "For sin is the transgression of the law," right? In your mind, this flesh is constantly trying to get you to go off, right? So it says, summary based on the page content. Genesis 4:7 is the Most High giving Cain a warning and a choice. Do well, be accepted. Do not well, sin is waiting to dominate you. And what? Sin leads to death. Your job is to rule over it, not let it rule over you, or not let it rule you. Surrounding verses show Cain ignores his warning and commits the first murder. If you want, okay, we'll skip down. So now we know. Uh, Now we know our job, because it says yours. So our job is to rule over it, not let it rule over you. So how do we know how to rule over it and not let it rule over us? Well, we have to go to what Yahweh Shah instructed us to do. So starting point, it says Genesis 4, rule over sin. In the page you're viewing, the Most High tells Cain, sin lieth at the door, and thou shalt rule over him. This establishes the principle. All right. Sin approaches like a predator, but man is commanded to subdue it. Basically, when you saw Satan moving, let me just get that. This is Job chapter 1, verse 6. It says, now there was a day when the sons of Yahweh came to present themselves, which those are the angels, before Yahweh, and Satan came also among them. So Satan is a son of Yahweh. There's no war that they're fighting in heaven that has yet to take place. It says, and Yahweh said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth and walking up and down in it. So he's active, man. He's all around us, waiting to pounce. It says, and Yahweh said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feared the Most High and escheweth evil. It says, then Satan answered Yahweh and said, doth Job fear the Most High for naught? Has not thou made a hedge about him and about his house, which that hedge is like a protection, and about all that he hath on every side, which goes into my name. It's my name also defines as a hedge or a state, or also where the willows grow. It says, thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. And that's when a lot of individuals, they forget about the goodness of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, but Job didn't. He understand that good and evil comes from Yahweh. It says, but put forth thy hand now and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. Which, this is, or this scenario is pretty much executed upon all you Israelites, man. A lot of you just folded quicker than others. A lot of you weren't blessed with this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. So you got out of there real quick. You didn't even have a chance. It says, and Yahweh said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power. So uh, Yahweh can give Satan all the things that you got, everything that you think you got. It could be in his hands, and he could just fuck you up, right? It says, only upon himself put not forth thy hand, right? And this is also dealing with the elect, man. Satan is touching all of our lives, but Yahweh has instructed Satan not to kill us. And Slakia for saying us, Yahweh Sharatazah be a part of that number. You know, Speaking as, as a hopeful elect, right? It says, so Satan went forth from the presence of Yahweh. And what do you think he went to go do? To go do his thing, what he's best at, right? So it says, sin approaches like a predator, but man is commanded to subdue it. Yahweh Shah later teaches the exact same principle, but with deeper spiritual clarity and stricter internal standards. All right, so let's see how Yahweh Shah instructed his followers to subdue sin. Below are the clearest teachings, all directly tied to the idea of mastering sin before it masters you. Just like Genesis 4. Subdue, subdue sin at the root, cut it off early, right? And that's why you're also instructed in the spirit to, have no friendship with the world, man. They ain't about nothing but bullshit anyway, man. I don't even like talking to people, especially, when I go places or even at the gym. I don't go to the gym to socialize. Go to the gym to go to war, but you gotta refrain, from individuals who are not walking in the light. That might be your best friend, that might be your family, that might be whoever that don't believe in this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. How can two walk together? At least they be agreed. So this is Matthew chapter 5, verse 28 through 30. It says, but I say unto you, and this is what Yahweh Shai instructed us on how to deal with this. It says that whosoever looketh upon a woman to lust after her, and this is dealing with a woman that is already taken. She's married already or engaged, right? To desire her. To desire what, man? To pop her, man. You know, that's the main attraction that women have with men. Men just want to pop you, man. They want to procreate. It's in their spirit. It says has committed adultery with her already in his mind, right? Because those sexual thoughts slip in, man. And despite that woman having a man already in your mind, you put her in all types of different positions. You planning out the date, the dinner. You know, you got 5-year, 10-year plans in your mind already about her. Until the point it gets so troubling and such a burning sensation and desire that in your lust you wanna actually experience that in real life. So therefore you go to plotting on how you can get that woman and pop that woman and fulfill those different lusts. It says, and if thy right hand, Slakia, and if thy right end, Slakia, if thy right eye offend thee. Now this is not literal. This is just talking about, things that cause you to go off. You gotta nip it in the bud, man. You gotta fight, to stop doing that or stop being affected by it. Doesn't mean literally cut your eye out like some niggas did. It says, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. And this is also dealing with wicked niggas. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body should be cast into hell. Right, because it's a thing that you thought you needed, you know. But as yeah, Staley, I don't remember Staley. I forget the captain's name, but the dude in the movie 300, they got his eye cut out. He said God gave me a spare, which applies in this sense that you're going to be able to live without those certain things that cause you to go off. You're going to survive. It might be inconvenient to your flesh, but at the end of it all, you're going to survive and you're going to thrive because you escaped that death. It says in that, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell or destruction. It says, and if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body should be cast into hell. Right. So let's go back to co-pilot. Says Yahushua teaches that sin begins in the heart, which your heart is your mind, not just in the act. Right. Lust equals adultery in the heart. Anger equals murder in the heart. Right. And anger, sometimes you get angry. I get angry. I'll be like, fuck, I want to do something to this mother effer. I want to, kill this mother effer. It only becomes a sin when you actually go through with it. You know what I'm saying? But a righteous man is going to rebuke those thoughts before they get to plot and execute. Like a lot of these people in the world do. So you got to nip that anger in the bud. Why am I angry? Why am I angry? Why am I angry at this person? Look at it spiritually. Why did the Most High allow these events to transpire the way that they did? Then, consider yourself. What did you do? What have I done that, is causing this judgment to happen? You got to consider. It says if something causes you to sin, cut it off. Remove the source. All right. Remove the source, man. Just like right now, I feel like I'm slacking on certain things and I'm finna start getting a little bit more busy. So I feel like, what's holding me back is, playing this damn video game in my spare time. Mainly to, help my brain exercise, because video games do help you with your cognition, and helping you, it does things to exercise your brain, but I know I deal with it a little bit too much for my own comfort. So, I'm going to pawn it, man. Maybe pawn it for like a couple of months and then, get it back out, just so I could have, that extra time to dedicate to Yahweh shooting out shot, man. And I know in my spirit that if it's still here at my domicile, I'm gonna fucking play it, man. So that's just a example, to remove the source of you playing video games too much. Just an example. If you're playing video games too much, get rid of that game, man. Put it away for a while. You got a problem with lusting after women. Find something else to do. Find a hobby to take up, a new hobby. Create a game in which Jake can play or something. That deals with truth, even if you're not gonna publish it. Find something else. Put your mind on other things that are spiritual and righteous. And I'm not saying this, like I'm trying to get brownie points or anything. I live a simple life. My life is centered around eliminating things that don't fucking matter. Just like this woman, man. This woman was supposed to come out here, and I told her not to come, man. Fuck that. And I'm thankful every day. Just imagine the difference it would have been if this bitch was here, but she ain't. And the water y'all bought some now shot. But it's locking for the rambling. Parallel to Genesis 4, sin lieth at the door. Yahweh Shah says, shut the door before it enters. And it all starts with your mind. That's why section 2, it says, watch your inner thoughts. Let's go to Mark. Mark chapter 7, verse 20. It says, and he said, that which cometh out of the man, meaning your words, right? Because that's what's in your mind, right? Now, sometimes what's in your mind is not really, I should say, sometimes what comes out of your mouth is really not indicative of your mind. Sometimes people say a lot of bullshit when they're angry, man, that they don't mean. Same thing with, alcohol. A lot of people say you tell the truth, but without having your faculties, the things you may say might not be true, but it might seem like it's the truth because it's something that you were wrestling in your thoughts. You were fighting those certain thoughts. Maybe you didn't have slucky, or maybe you had a problem with someone, and when you're in your sober mind, you're rebuking those thoughts of having that problem because you're sober, right? And you have the ability to do such, but when you're drinking, those different spirits enter in and they cause you to reveal those thoughts you were battling. So it might seem like you might have had a problem with someone when you're spilling the beans about those thoughts you were wrestling when you were sober. When you're drunk, hey, that's why I quit drinking, man, and I ain't never felt better. Now, I'm not saying that I'm 5, 10, 15 years sober or anything like that. You know, I haven't drank anything since last Passover, and I'm praying like hell that, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah don't put a drinking demon on me, Yahweh Shah Ratazah when I celebrate this coming Passover, man, you know. But continue, it says, for which, goes back to you planning ahead, man. I know that drinking could be a problem for me, so I have to plan ahead. I have to set things in motion, set things in place. So, I won't backslide after the Passover, man. Being proactive. Sometimes you got to be proactive to prevent, succumbing to certain sin. It says, for from within, out of the heart or the mind of men proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, which fornications goes into, trying to worship other deities and believe in different doctrines. It says murders, right? Somebody might have pissed you off, and all you desire is to see that person be destroyed, man. And every chance you get, you omit those thoughts instead of, considering yourself and how much you need mercy, right? It says thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness. an evil eye. A lot of you got evil eyes toward another man. And, when you really go into the nitty gritty, chances are that other man wasn't doing nothing but trying to help you the whole time and had your best interest. But just because they rubbed you the wrong way, they struck your ego, you want that guy dead, or you got an evil eye toward him. And, therefore you push that same energy on other brothers for other brothers to have an evil eye toward them. It says blasphemy, speaking ill against this truth, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. So these are things that you got to watch out for, man, and nip them in the bud. You know. So it says, going back to co-pilot, Yahweh Shah lists the sins that come from within: evil thoughts, pride, envy, murder, fornication. He teaches that sin is not a external force only; it's a internal battle. So that's something that you got to understand. The battle starts from within. Parallel: Cain's anger and jealousy were internal before the murder happened. Right? He was pissed off. He was hot. He wanted to spin the block, put him in the spinner. And what he did to Abel, as it says in the scriptures, his blood spoke expressly to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, which means Abel was complaining about that day, about what Cain did to him, man. And I'm pretty sure Cain never had a better brother than Abel. Section 3 says, pray to avoid temptation. That's one of the major things, man. I pray all the time. I prayed before I even did this video. I prayed as I was doing my introduction to this video, man. Hoping at least one brother of the elect will be edified. You got to pray 3 times a day. Also, pray without ceasing, right? Little prayers here and there, just giving thanks and praise to the best of your ability. Because I can't lie to you and say I pray 3 times a day. As far as like the Peliel and the Shema and, Psalms and those type of prayers. But I do have my own personal prayers and conversations with Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua that I believe that has been what has been keeping me. This is St. Matthew chapter 26, verse 41. It says, watch and pray. The Most High put the spirit on me to have a channel called that, man. The original Watch and Pray channel. Then I did a series called the Watch and Pray Report. And then, you saw other individuals adopt that same title, Watch and Pray, right? So you have to watch what's going on, the news, be circumspect, watching your surroundings. Sometimes a lot of things happen in your own city, that should be getting reported on, You also got to pray. You got to pray without ceasing, man. That's what has kept me in this truth, man. It has been nothing else but prayer and mercy of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. That has allowed me to maintain the doctrine and also grow in the spirit. There's a lot of things that I didn't learn being in the camp that I know now. It says that ye enter not into temptation, to be tempted with sin. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. So our spirit is willing. Our spirit is damn near unstoppable, but our flesh isn't, man. Our flesh has limitations, and that's the battle between the flesh and the spirit. They're constantly warring against each other. And the best way to fight that war is to make your flesh uncomfortable, man. That's why it's good to, exercise despite bodily exercise. Um, Profiting a little, it do profit, right? It says the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. So let's go back to co-pilot. It says, watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. Yahweh Shah gives two tools: watchfulness, awareness of sin approaching. That's why the apostles always talk about you need to do your videos. You need to be diligent, fervent, fired. When I say fired, I mean focus, because focus goes into the word fire. On fire, hot, right? And, they also speak about prayer, strength to resist that Yahweh Shem Shah is going to gift you if you ask for it. Parallel, Cain was warned to do well. Yahweh Shah gives the method to do it. Section 4, deny yourself daily. Sometimes you got to refrain from certain things, man. You might be invited to a party or something, and they ain't doing nothing but commemorating false deities or something like that. And you could just say you're going to take a rain check or something. This is Luke chapter 9, verse 23. It says, and he said to them all, if any man will come after me, meaning to follow Yahweh Shai, let him deny himself. Meaning, whatever it is about you, throw it out the window, man. It says, and take up his cross daily and follow me, right? And what I mean by that, I mean, whatever you had going on in the world, whatever you thought was who you were, that's not according to the scriptures, you know, um, your mode of thinking, right? You gotta nip all that in the bud and reform your mind to the ways of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah, and take, the burden, uh, and the burden consists of everything that comes with it, which is adversities and chastisements and humiliations and things of that nature. You almost got to think the way, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah is treating us, is the same way that we treat our women when they transgress against us, man. Right? But unlike us, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah is not totally hardening his heart against the elect. The elect got to prove their love to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah. But with man and dealing with a man and his woman, a lot of you don't have no mercy to the weaker vessel, and she's the weaker vessel. You know, and I'm not trying to say I'm all about the women or anything, because I'm really not. But just making an example. You know, Luke 9:23 again, it says, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. Self-denial is the discipline that keeps sin from ruling over you. Parallel, Cain let his emotions rule him. Yahweh Shah teaches the opposite: rule your impulses. One way to rule your impulses is to abide in his word, constantly being involved in this truth, man. And there's so much things going on. I could understand if someone wanted to take a little break, maybe an hour or two, because that's the That's the only time that we really, if we're real serious about this truth, that's the only amount of time that we could really afford, and that's really basically just for self care, man. Going to the gym is part of my self care, but even at the gym, I'm listening to the elders, I'm listening to the apostles and certain brothers, right? It says the truth will make you free. This is St. John chapter 8, verse 31. Then said Yahweh Shai to those of Yahweh which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. Right? So you got to continue in the way, the word, and the belief, that Yahweh Shah left as an example. 32, it says, and ye shall know the truth. And the truth, the doctrine of the truth is with Gadala Rachayim, which is great millstone in the Hebrew, man. And anyone that is a super scholar, which is commendable, it's in the feminine sense. Because I believe that's how AI broke it down for me. That it's really pronounced in the feminine sense, right? It says, and the truth shall make you free. Yeah, this truth is making you free from all the lies and all the deception, you know? Going back to Copilot, it says, if you continue in my word, the truth shall make you free. Free from what? Yahweh Shai answers in verse 34. So let's jump down to 34. It says, they answered him, we are Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? Yahushua answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committed sin is the servant of sin. Right, and 2/3 of our people are servants of sin, man. Right? And they're reprobate. They're void of understanding, they're void of judgment. So a lot of them, they're not imparted the awareness of sin. They're living on uh, complacent deviancy. Is that it? Is that how you say it? Well, how you say it again? I think that's how I say it. Complacent deviancy. Let me see. Oh no, normalization of deviancy. That's what they're on. They're on normalization of deviancy. So you know, people are doing things for a duration of time wrong till it becomes the norm. The wrong thing becomes the wrong thing. It says, um, so abiding in his teachings breaks sin's mastery. So you gotta constantly be involved in this truth, man. Parallel, Genesis chapter 4, verse 7, it says, thou shalt rule over him. Yahweh Shah shows how to rule over sin through truth, right? Section 6, walk in the light. I'm gonna go same chapter, but verse 12, Yahweh Shah is the light of the world. St. John chapter 8, verse 12, it says, then spake Yahweh Shah again. Now, Yahweh Shah is the name of the Heavenly Father's Son, who the world inly calls Jesus Christ. Which I start to say just JC, because I don't like saying that name. I don't even want a demon in my mind when I'm in time of trouble to even think of, a white image with the name Jesus. So I really don't like saying that name. And as you've seen over the past decade, I don't like saying that name unless it's for edification purposes. But anyway, it says, then spake Yahushua again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. And that world is dealing with Israel, the Israelites, you know. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So we have to follow the example that Yahweh Shah left behind, man. And the example that he expects to see when he returns. Walk in the light, St. John chapter 8, verse 12. I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness. Light equals righteousness, truth, obedience. So, darkness will be the opposite of that. Parallel, Genesis 4 warns of sin, crouching in the darkness. Walking in Yahweh Shah's light keeps you out of that danger zone. Also, let's go ahead and cue it up. Section 7, it says, forgive quickly. Don't let anger grow. St. Matthew chapter 5, I'll start at verse 21. It says personal relationships. St. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill, which it really should be murder. And whosoever shall murder shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause. So a lot of you have anger towards someone for no fucking reason, man. It says shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Rakah, or Raka, let's get that word real quick.
Strong's G 4469. Hrakah. Hrakah. Thayer's Lexicon, related entry. Hracha. Hracha.
Which is stands for empty. An example, a senseless, empty-headed man. A term of reproach used among the Jews in the time of Hamashiach. Basically, let me see, how far down am I in the rabbit hole? Okay, hold on. Similar to probate and just trying to see something for myself real quick. So it says, rakah and reprobate are not the same word, but they touch two related but different layers of scripture. One is about how a person speaks. The other is about what a person has become. Understanding the distinction actually sharpens both concepts. What rakah means, rakah is an Aramaic insult Yahweh Shai quotes in the Sermon on the Mount. It means empty-headed, worthless, vain fellow, good for nothing. It is a verbal expression of contempt. Yahweh Shah uses it to show that sin begins in the heart, not just in outward actions. In context, Yahweh Shah is teaching anger leads to danger of judgment. Saying Rakah leads to danger of the council. Saying thou fool leads to danger of hellfire. So Rakah is about the spirit of hatred and contempt coming out of a person's mouth. In short, Rakah a insult that reveals a corrupt heart. Right. So let's continue. It says, shall be in danger of the council, but whosoever shall say thou fool shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother have aught against thee, which ought meaning basically a problem, leave there thy gift before the altar and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. And this also includes the Passover too, man. Right? So going back to Copilot, it says Yahweh teaches anger leads to judgment, reconcile quickly, don't let wrath linger. Parallel, Cain's anger fell his countenance. Yahweh teaches how to stop that process before sin takes over. Summary, Yahweh's method to subdue sin. Yahweh teaches his followers to subdue sin by cutting it off at the root, guarding the heart, which is your mind, watching and praying, denying the flesh, abiding in his word, walking in the light, forgiving quickly, staying spiritually alert. This is the New Testament fulfillment of the Genesis 4 command, sin lieth at the door, but you must rule over it. Yahweh gives the tools, discipline, and spiritual framework to actually do what Cain failed to do. You know, with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm gonna say shalom.